second. So just give us a quick rundown on that poll that came out of the top 4. What are the numbers?
Right quickly. Now, according to 11 Alive and B103, John Oxendine, 32%, Karen Handel, 23%, and then Mr. Deal with 12% and Eric Johnson with 12% tied for third place.
Johnson's obviously came up. He's tied. Ashley's been predicting Johnson's going to work his way back in this thing. So your prediction now is starting to look good.
Well, you only have to be at the top of your game on one day in the campaign, and that is Election Day. Eric Johnson is the most seasoned politician in this race. He has led the Senate. He has support across the entire state. And Eric helped lead the Senate from the takeover when the Republican Party took over and the Senate transferred from Democrat control to Republican control. Eric helped mastermind that entire plan.
Okay, let's go over to Roswell. We got a major budget issue. Kent Michael Hart, one of the most conservative, fiscally conservative council members on the entire North Side, flip-flops over. John, what is going on in city government here?
I think there's an easy answer to it, and it's term limits. This is an example of the fact that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The longer you're in there, the more you become part of the problem. I think he just became part of the problem.
Wood says he's going to veto the budget. Do you think he'll be able to sustain a majority, or does it matter?
I don't think he will sustain the majority, but I want to disagree with term limits, because once you term limit the elected officials, you term limit the voters, and the bureaucrats have more power, and they stay in charge. But it is a shame that local governments cannot take this opportunity to streamline their budgets and actually reduce some waste that should have been done a long time ago. It is a great opportunity if they approach it from a business standpoint and not from a government jobs program.
Every night I go to bed thanking God that there's a presidential term limit.
Well, okay. So Ashley, you're not for term limits. This is the Incumbent Protection Act. Okay. Why don't we go straight to the D56 debate? We had the 3 candidates in. Susan, why don't we start with you? What was your take on it? Winners, losers, who gained, who lost?
I think each of the candidates scored some great jabs. It was a contest to see of who was the most conservative, of course.
Who could out-conservative each other.
Exactly. David Belle-Isle is an interesting candidate because I think he's really grounded in the principles, almost a libertarian, not only less government, but almost putting government in the hands of the people. He understands that we shouldn't be taking money from Washington. It almost empowers Washington to take over our lives more. That's the mistake that has been made over and over again at the state capitol, from taking stimulus money and not cutting the state budget as we should have been doing in the past 2 years and making those tough decisions. I'm not sure I see that in those other 2 candidates, but it was very, very wonderful to hear someone like Brandon Beach talk about eliminating agencies such as Greta, such as CERTA, agencies that were created under Governor Roy Barnes that are not needed. And it was very surprising to hear a fireman talk about going to zero-based budgeting. If we had done this past session, we probably wouldn't have been in the situation we're in now, where we're probably facing another $400 million deficit, and may have to have a special session this fall because we're not going to get the stimulus money that we thought we were going to get from Medicaid to help balance this budget right now in the 2011 budget.
So, end of day, who's up, who's down now?
Obviously, it's probably going to be a runoff between Brandon Beach and David Belle-Isle.
Okay, Beach, Belle-Isle, your protection. John, we had some interesting answers.
Fascinating answers. I actually thought that, John, you asked a tough question on that $25 million bond.
Well, I don't think he answered it.
He didn't, and Beach did a great job on it, which was, this is the way it should happen with private enterprise. So in practice, I think David articulates conservative values very well, but it was a tough question for him. The other one that I thought was great was the gambling question, and it was very entertaining. They all claimed to be conservatives, yet they said government should be in the business of helping people gamble. If it's a business, which I think it is, if you're conservative, why not let everybody do it? And heck, while you're at it, start a car dealership, your own hospitals.
Well, I think we have that, right?
Well,
Grady, MARTA, government owns.
And so it was, to Susan's point, it was very refreshing to, after 4 weeks, 3 governor candidates and a whole slew of people coming in, to finally hear one person say, I'd like to cut a department. It took us that long. Everybody claims to be conservative.
It took us almost 2 seconds to cut something out.
It's really funny. There are 2 little-known politicians that were back about 20, 25 years ago with the last names of Reagan and Thatcher.
Right.
And they had these ideas of actually selling off government assets, getting the government out of businesses which they don't belong in.
Okay, Ashley.
I thought it was very interesting. I actually wanted to hear more meat,
Yeah.
of which we really did not get. But again, their answers were short. I was surprised at the bingo not being related to education. However, that whole funding issue is a whole nother ballgame, and never should we use lottery funds to underwrite K through 12.
So basically, you don't think any of them answered it. Okay, I've got one thing to add. I thought that there was one question that I just had to shake my head when I asked Albers if he had a college degree, and once again, John Albers is blaming the media, saying, oh, they got it wrong, took me out of text, whatever. I know for a fact, I called personally the reporter for that. He said he had a degree. The problem with John Albers, he just does not come clean. Big problem. Okay, we got to get out predictions runoff. John, or not?
Actually, I'm going to say Beach is definitely in. I'm convinced after seeing these guys there will be a runoff, but Albers has an awful lot of endorsements. He keeps racking them up.
Okay,
I'm going with the dark horse.
5 seconds.
Okay, that's it.
What is
I'm
it?
going Beach, Albers, runoff.
Beach Albers. Susan?
Belle Isle Beach runoff.
Belle Isle Beach. Ashley?
Belle Isle Beach, if Beach doesn't take it all.
I'm going to say Beach 48%, Belle Isle second, Albers distant third. Okay, that's all we have time for this week. We'd like to thank Maria Sheffield, John Albers, Brandon Beach, and David Belle Isle for joining us. Thanks as always to our panelists, John Keim and Susan Lassetti Myers. Scheduled to appear next week are Georgia gubernatorial candidates, Republican Eric Johnson, your favorite dark horse candidate.
Yes.
And my favorite Democrat in the world, other than Vernon Jones, Thurbert Baker. And don't forget to join us Tuesday, July 20th for our live election night coverage. If you have questions or comments, please email editor@beaconcast.com. That's editor@beaconcast.com. For Ashley Widener, I'm John Fredericks. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Political Insider, broadcast exclusively on Comcast Cable. Look for the Political Insider every Sunday in the Beacon, North Fulton's uncompromising weekly newspaper. This has been a production